I have a right to know why I'm being detained. I'm asking a simple legal
We
question.
actually reads of an immigration query. Step out of the car.
On what lawful basis?
We'll determine that once we verify your status.
Verify my status. I am requesting the legal grounds for this stop.
Ma'am, comply now or this escalates.
I am complying. I am asking for justification. There is a difference.
The black SUV does not slow down. It turns into the driveway at 7:14 in the morning and parks at a hard angle, nose pointing outward, blocking the exit, like whoever is inside has done this before and wants it to feel that way. The engine stays running. Inside her silver Audi, Judge Zendaya Okafor-Price does not flinch. She is already dressed. Briefcase on the passenger seat. Travel mug of coffee balanced in the cup holder. She has a 9 a.m. appellate hearing, and she reviewed her notes twice before she even came downstairs. Her mind is already in the courtroom. Then the SUV doors open. Two men step out, tactical gray, ICE insignia stitched onto the chest. They walk toward her vehicle the way men walk when the outcome is already decided in their heads, not rushing, not casual, just moving with that particular brand of authority that says the rules are on their side, and they know it. The one in front reaches her window first. Late 40s, square jaw, the kind of man whose confidence has never once been interrupted. He leans down and looks at her like she is a question he already knows the answer to. "Ma'am," he says, "whose property is this?" Zendaya looks at him. She does not look away. "Mine," she says. "If you're just joining us, welcome. Take a breath. This story is going to take you somewhere important. Stay with it all the way through, because what happens next changes everything." The agent, his name badge reads Coulter, M., does not write anything down. He glances at a tablet in his left hand, then back at her face. His partner, younger, stands 3 feet behind, arms loose, and eyes scanning the front of the house like they are looking for something specific. "You live here?" Coulter asks. "Yes." "How long?" 9 years, she says. Coulter nods. Slow. The way someone nods when they are listening, but not hearing. "I'm going to need to see some ID, ma'am." Zendaya does not hesitate. She reaches into her briefcase with the same smooth, unhurried motion she uses when she reaches for a case file on the bench. She hands him her Texas driver's license. She watches his eyes move across it. His face does not change, not one muscle. He passes the ID to his partner without a word. The partner holds it and types something into the tablet. "Anyone else in the residence?" Coulter asks. "No." "You sure about that?" The two words land differently than the others. Not a question, exactly. And more like a test. More like he is waiting to see if she changes her story. Zendaya's jaw tightens, just once, just slightly, and then it releases. She breathes through her nose. Her hands stay flat on the steering wheel. "Yes," she says. "I am sure." Coulter lifts the radio clipped to his shoulder. He reads her name into it. He reads the address. He waits. The radio crackles. A voice comes back. And here is the moment. Here is the 7 seconds that will cost the United States government $7 million. Coulter's expression does not collapse. It does not fall apart. It just pauses. A tightening around the eyes. A stillness in the jaw. He looks at the license in his partner's hand. He looks at Zendaya. He looks back at the radio. Whatever the voice just told him, whatever name just came through that static, he already knows this stop is different now. But he does not end it. He keeps going. "Ma'am," he says, "we're going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Zendaya does not move. Her hands do not move. Her voice, when it comes, is so steady, it sounds like it belongs in a different room entirely. Cooler, quieter, built from something that cannot be shaken. "On what grounds?" she asks. Nobody answers that question. The silence between them stretches out over the driveway, over the wet morning pavement, over the neighborhood that is just now waking up around them. A neighbor's porch light flips on across the street. A dog barks somewhere 2 houses down, and in the upper corner of Coulter's chest, blinking, active, recording everything, is a body camera whose footage nobody inside that ice field office has bothered to review in 11 months. That is about to change. Coulter takes 1 step back from the driver's window. Just one. Like he is deciding something. His partner, badge reads Fitch, D, stops typing on the tablet. He looks at Coulter. Something moves between them. Wordless, the way things move between two people who have done this together before and suddenly feel the ground shift under them at the same time. This is a standard residency verification, Coulter says. His voice is flat, practiced. We're conducting neighborhood assessments in this area. Zendaya does not blink. Odd, I've never heard of a federal residency verification that requires a homeowner to exit their vehicle after their identity has already been confirmed, she says. Have you? Coulter says nothing. Because I haven't, she continues. And I've spent 22 years reading federal procedure. Fitch stops writing entirely. Coulter clears his throat. He looks at the tablet. He looks at the house. He looks at anything that is not Zendaya Okafor-Price's eyes. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. And I'm going to ask you one more time, she says. What specific legal basis are you using to extend this stop? The silence is back. This time it is heavier. Down the street, a woman in a running jacket has stopped mid-stride. She is holding her phone at waist level, screen facing outward. A man 2 houses away steps onto his porch with a coffee mug and does not go back inside. They are watching. Coulter leans in slightly. We don't need a reason to verify residency in a federal enforcement zone. This neighborhood is not a federal enforcement zone, Zendaya says. And yes, Agent Coulter, you do need a reason. Articulable, documented, specific reason. That is the law. I know that law. You know that law. She looks directly at his body camera. She looks at it the way someone looks at something they are going to need later. Your camera, she says, has been running since you stepped out of that vehicle. The timestamp reads 7:14 a.m. It is now 7:23. I have shown you a valid state ID. My name has cleared through your radio. My address matches my documentation. And you have obtained no new information in 9 minutes that would justify continuing this stop. I want you to know, on the record, and that camera is your record, that I am aware of every second of this. Fitch looks at Coulter. Coulter does not look back at him. He is staring at Zendaya with a new kind of attention. Not suspicion anymore. Something closer to the first sign of recalculation. And this is the moment Zendaya makes her own internal decision. She stops responding emotionally. She stops registering this as something happening to her. She starts cataloging. She starts building. She memorizes badge numbers. She memorizes the SUV's plate. She memorizes Coulter's hand position, his phrasing, the exact words he used, and the exact order he used them. Then she notices that the tablet Fitch has been typing on is not connected to any live federal database. It has no cell signal indicator, no data tether. It is a list. A printed, static list. Loaded before they left the office. She notices that they have not written down a single thing she has said, and she notices that Coulter keeps glancing at a specific house, not hers. The one next door. 4217 Briarwood Court. Like they plan to go there next. Ma'am, Coulter says finally. He straightens up. He adjusts his vest. We appreciate your cooperation. We're going to wrap this up. He steps back. Fitch steps back with him. They do not apologize. They do not explain. They walk back to the black SUV with the same unhurried pace they came with. Like nothing happened. Like no time was wasted. Like a federal agent did not just spend 9 minutes asking an American homeowner to prove she belongs in her own driveway. They pull out. The SUV disappears around the corner. Zendaya sits in the silence for a moment. The engine of her Audi is still off. Her travel mug of coffee is cold now. She reaches for her phone and opens the notes application. She starts typing. Time, badge numbers, plate, exact dialogue, sequence of events. Her thumbs move without stopping for 6 full minutes. Then she puts the car in reverse. She has a 9 a.m. hearing. But before she backs out of the driveway, she looks at the house next door. 4217. She looks at it for 3 seconds. Long enough to commit it to memory. Long enough to wonder who lives there. Whether they were also visited this morning. And whether anyone asked them to step out of their car, too. She drives to the courthouse. She does not tell anyone what happened. Not yet. And what she does not know, what she cannot possibly know yet, is that her name is not the only name on that list. The appellate hearing goes for 4 hours and 12 minutes. Zendaya argues with the precision she is known for. Measured. Documented. She cites 3 cases from memory without looking at her notes. The opposing counsel objects twice on grounds that do not hold. The panel of 3 judges leans toward her for most of the morning, and by the time the session breaks at 1:17 p.m., the room feels like it has already decided. She eats lunch alone at her desk. Ham sandwich, black coffee, a yellow legal pad open in front of her with nothing written on it yet. She opens her laptop. She goes to the Travis County Public Records portal. She types in her street address. She pulls stop logs, a category most residents never know exists, a public document generated by any documented federal or local enforcement action within a given radius. 2 results come back. Her block, both in the last 30 days. She clicks the first one. Date, 17 days ago. Agent number, 40291-C. Outcome, no action taken. Address, 4211. Briarwood Court. Demographic indicator field, optional, rarely filled in, reads Hispanic appearance. She clicks the second. Date, 9 days ago. Same agent number. Outcome, no action taken. Address, 4203 Briarwood Court. Demographic indicator field, Hispanic appearance. She sets the sandwich down. She runs the agent number. She cross-references it against the badge she saw this morning. It is not a match. Coulter is a different agent number. But the entry style, the phrasing in the notes field, the way the outcome is logged, is identical. Like both agents were trained to write the same way. Like they were given the same template. She backs out. She widens the search. She pulls all stop log entries for the surrounding 6-block radius over the past 60 days. 14 results, 14 documented stops, no arrests, no citations, no incident reports filed. Just a timestamp, an agent number, an address, and that optional demographic indicator field, which is filled in on 11 of the 14 entries. Every single filled entry reads the same. Hispanic appearance, black appearance, Hispanic appearance, black appearance. She reads through all 14 entries twice. Then she does something she has not done in 22 years of legal practice. She sits very still and lets herself feel the weight of what she is reading. Not the rage. She will not let the rage do the work. She has never let the rage do the work, but the weight. The specific, chest-heavy gravity of numbers that tell a story no one was supposed to read. 14 stops, 0 arrests, 100% of documented demographics pointing in the same direction. She closes the laptop. She writes 3 things on the yellow legal pad. FOIA, stop logs, 18 months, all agents, zip codes 78701 through 78759. Internal communications, residency verification initiative, all references. Authorization chain, who signed off, at what level, on what date. And she draws a line under all 3. Then she writes one more thing below the line. Who told them to say that phrase? Because she has been in courtrooms long enough to know the difference between language a person chooses and language a person is given. Coulter said residency verification twice, both times with the same rhythm, both times with no explanation attached. You do not say a phrase like that without being handed it. You do not repeat it in exactly the same cadence unless someone told you that is what you call it. And here is what stops her cold. She cannot find that phrase anywhere. Not in ICE policy documents, not in field directive archives, not in the regional operating guidelines she pulls up on the federal database she has access to through the court system. The phrase Community Residency Verification Initiative does not appear in any public-facing document. She picks up her phone. She calls Dominique Renard Ellis, an attorney she knows from a civil rights conference 3 years ago, someone who has spent a decade filing federal cases against enforcement agencies and winning. She does not explain the full picture. She just asks one question. If I bring you a pattern case with 14 documented stops, 0 arrests, and a phrase that appears in no authorized directive, what's your first move? There is a pause on the line. Then Dominique says, my first move is to find out if the pattern is actually 14. She hangs up. Zendaya stares at the legal pad. The number 14 is still circled at the top of the page. And then she thinks about the 2 stops logged before her morning, 4211 and 4203 Briarwood Court, the 2 houses to her left. She thinks about the way Coulter's eyes cut to the house next door as he was leaving. She thinks they were not done with her street. She thinks They were going to keep going. And somewhere in an ice field office across the city, a supervisor named Deputy Director Alston Briggs is reading a message on his phone that his agent just sent him. The message is 3 words. We had a problem. Briggs reads the message. He does not respond right away. 2 days pass, nothing public, nothing dramatic. The morning looks the same as every other morning on Briarwood Court. Sprinklers running at 6, cars backing out of driveways by 7, the school bus stopping at the corner at 7:43 like it always does. And Zendaya goes to work. She rules on emotion. She reviews 2 briefs. She eats lunch at her desk again. On the second afternoon, the call comes. It comes through the court administrator's office, which means it came in through official channels, which means someone made a deliberate choice about how to route it. The caller identifies himself as Deputy Director Alston Briggs, Southwest Regional Field Office, ICE. He would like to speak with Judge Okafor Price at her earliest convenience. He describes the matter as a courtesy follow-up regarding a field engagement. Zendaya's clerk delivers the message on a yellow slip of paper. Zendaya reads it once, puts it face down on the desk, goes back to her brief. She calls Briggs back the next morning from her office, with the door closed and her phone on speaker so she can take notes. Briggs opens with formalities. He is smooth, practiced, the kind of smooth that comes from years of managing difficult conversations inside large bureaucracies. He expresses regret that the interaction on Tuesday morning may have been disruptive. He uses the word miscommunication twice. He says the agents involved are experienced professionals and that the field office takes community relations seriously. He does not say the word mistake. He does not say the word wrong. Zendaya writes down no admission. She writes down disruptive. She writes down miscommunication times 2. Deputy Director Briggs, she says, when he finishes, I appreciate the call. I have one question before we go any further. Of course, he says. Can you direct me to the official authorization document for what your agents described as a community residency verification initiative? The specific policy number, the authorization level, and the date it was signed? Silence. Not long, maybe 3 seconds. But in a conversation this careful, 3 seconds is a paragraph. That information would be routed through our public affairs office, Briggs says. I've looked through all publicly available ICE field directives for the Southwest region, Zendaya says. I could not locate a document matching that program description. I'd like the document number so I can find it. Another pause. I'll have someone follow up with you on that, Briggs says. No one follows up. Not that day, not the next, not the day after that. On day 6, Zendaya's FOIA request comes back, partial. 63 pages out of the estimated 400 she requested. The rest are marked pending review. The 63 pages include stop logs. Not the full 18-month window, just the last 90 days. Zendaya builds a new spreadsheet. 51 stops across 4 zip codes. The same 4 zip codes. The same note structure. The same optional demographic indicator field. Filled in on 44 of 51 entries. She looks at the agent numbers. 3 separate agents rotated through these stops. Coulter appears on 19 of them. An agent numbered 38874-A appears on 16. A third agent, 41107-C, appears on the remaining 16. 3 agents, 1 pattern, 1 phrase. She sits with that number, 51, for a long time. She calls Dominique Renard Ellis back. The number is not 14, she says. How many? Dominique asks. At minimum, 51. In 90 days. Across 4 zip codes. The remaining 14 months of records are still pending. The line is quiet. I'm flying to Austin, Dominique says. She lands on a Thursday. They meet at Zendaya's home in the study, with both laptops open and the spreadsheets printed across the full width of the desk. Dominique goes through every page without speaking. She reads the stop log notes. She reads the demographic fields. She reads the outcome column, which, across all 51 stops, reads the same way every single time. No action taken? No action taken. No action taken. Dominique puts down her pen. You know what 51 stops with no arrests means? She says. See, it means they had no legal basis for any of them, Zendaya says. It means they were never looking for anything, Dominique says. They were just reminding people they were being watched. The room goes quiet. Outside, the Briarwood Court sprinklers are running again. Somewhere down the block, a car door closes. Dominique opens a new document on her laptop. She starts typing. "Here's what I need from you," she says. "The body cam footage from your stop, every page of that FOIA return, and the name of every other resident on that street you trust enough to contact." She pauses, looks up. "Because here's what's coming next," she says. "When we go to file, the field office is going to try to make this about one agent on one morning. They are going to say it was isolated. They are going to say Coulter made a judgment call that didn't pan out." She turns the laptop so Zendaya can see the screen. "And we are going to show them 51. Outside the window of the study, the evening is going dark. The streetlights on Briarwood Court flicker on, one by one, in a slow orange chain down the block. The neighborhood looks exactly the way it always looks, but somewhere in a federal field office across the city, a printer is running, and the document coming off that printer is not good news for anyone in that building. The FOIA response arrives in full on a Tuesday, 22 days after the original request. 847 pages. Dominique prints none of it. She builds a master spreadsheet instead. Date, agent number, address, stop duration, demographic indicator, see outcome. And cross-references every entry against census demographic data for each block. This is not unusual work for her. She has done this kind of analysis in 7 prior cases. She knows what a pattern looks like when it is trying to hide, and she knows what it looks like when it is not trying at all. This one is not trying at all. 18 months, 4 zip codes, 111 documented stops, 0 arrests, 0 citations, 0 incident reports generated for any stop that was not already covered by the stop log itself. 111 times, a federal agent appeared in front of a residential address in one of these 4 zip codes. 111 times, the agent asked questions, ran a name, waited, and left. 111 times, the stop log outcome column reads the same 3 words. Said no action taken. She pulls the census data for each zip code. The 4 zones share one measurable characteristic beyond geography. In the past 12 years, each one has seen a documented increase in Black and Hispanic home ownership. Part of a broader demographic shift in the Austin metro area that city planners have been tracking since 2011. These are not low-income areas. They are not high-crime areas. The call volume data Dominique pulls from Austin PD shows all 4 zip codes at or below the city median for service calls. There is no enforcement reason to concentrate a federal field program in these 4 zones. There is one other reason, and it is sitting in the demographic indicator column of every single stop where the field was filled in. Dominique runs the numbers. Of the 111 stops, 89 have the demographic indicator field populated. Of those 89 entries, 94% identify the subject as Black or Hispanic. 6% identify no clear demographic. 0% identify the subject as white. She looks at that number for a long time. 0. Then she pulls Coulter's file specifically. He has been with the Southwest Regional Field Office for 11 years. His record includes 14 prior complaints, filed by residents, advocacy groups, and in 2 cases, other agents. 14 complaints, over 11 years. Internal Affairs reviewed each one. Internal Affairs cleared him every time. The documentation on each review is thin, the thinnest reviews being the 8 complaints that specifically used the words racial profiling. 8 complaints. Why 8 clearances? 8 times someone in that office looked at what Coulter was doing and decided there was nothing to see. Dominique calls Zendaya from her Dallas office on a Thursday morning. "I need to tell you what we found," she says, "and I want you to hear it completely before you respond." She walks through the numbers. 111 stops, the 0 arrest rate, the demographic concentration, Coulter's complaint history, the 4 zip codes and their demographics, the phrase Community Residency Verification Initiative, which still appears in 0 authorized ICE policy documents. Zendaya listens without interrupting. When Dominique finishes, the line is quiet for 4 seconds. "Pull the body cam footage from all 111 stops," Zendaya says. "We filed for it in the second FOIA request," Dominique says, "but there's a problem." She pauses. Of the 111 stops, body cam footage exists for only 37 of them. What happened to the other 74? Either the camera was not activated, or the footage was not retained past the standard 30-day automatic deletion window. The line is quiet again. In 37 stops, the camera was on, Dominique says. In 74 stops, the majority, there is no footage. And Coulter's stops specifically? Of his 31 documented stops in the 18-month window, camera was active on 9, including yours. 9 out of 31. Zendaya does not say anything for a moment. She is doing the same thing she always does when a number doesn't add up. She is holding it steady, and not letting it become an emotion, making it stay a fact until she knows exactly what the fact means. He knew which ones to record, she says. We can't prove intent, Dominique says. No, Zendaya agrees, but a jury can look at 9 out of 31 and ask the same question the rest of us are asking. That afternoon, Dominique's team begins the next phase of the work. They cross-reference the stop log addresses against public property records and identify 33 homeowners whose addresses appear in the data. They begin quiet, careful outreach, no social media, no press. A letter, mailed physically, describing the pattern without identifying any individual, asking if the recipient experienced a federal field stop in the past 18 months and would be willing to speak confidentially with a civil rights attorney. Of the 33 letters sent, 19 people respond. Of the 19 who respond, 16 agreed to speak. Of the 16 who agreed to speak, 15 described the same opening words from the agents who showed up at their homes. Whose property is this? 15 out of 15. The same words, the same flat tone, same morning hours, never afternoon, never evening, always between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. The same follow-up questions after identification cleared. The same phrase, community residency verification. Same phrase. 15 different people. 15 different addresses. 15 different mornings when someone in tactical gray appeared in their driveway and asked them to prove they belonged there. Dominique puts the interview summaries in a binder. She labels the tab, Pattern Evidence. The binder is 2 inches thick. She sends Zendaya a message that night. 2 sentences. We have what we need. The question now is who inside that office gave the order. Zendaya reads it at 10 p.m. in her study. She sets the phone down on the desk beside the yellow legal pad where she wrote 4 things on the first night. FOIA. Internal Communications. Authorization Chain. WHO told them to say that phrase. She picks up a pen. She draws a check mark next to the first one. She draws a check mark next to the second one. She draws a check mark next to the third one. She looks at the 4th line. Who told them to say that phrase? She does not check it yet, because they have not found the answer yet. They know the pattern exists. They know it is documented. They know it stretches across 4 zip codes and 18 months and 111 families who were asked to justify their presence in their own homes. But the name, the specific name of whoever stood in front of a room in that field office and told 3 agents that what they were doing had a name, that it was called a Community Residency Verification Initiative, that it was authorized, that it was fine, that name is still 1 document away. And somewhere inside 847 pages of federal records, in an internal memo that may or may not have been included by mistake, that name is waiting. Dominique finds it the next morning. She reads it a second time. She picks up the phone. Zendaya, she says, I need you to sit down. The memo is 3 pages long. Subject line, Residential Engagement Pilot Program. Southwest Region Field Offices. Date, March 14th, 11 months before the morning Agent Coulter stepped out of his SUV and asked Zendaya Okafor Price, whose property she was standing on. Dominique reads the first paragraph out loud, even though Zendaya is not in the room. She reads it to herself because she needs to hear it spoken to believe it is real. This pilot program is designed to enhance community awareness of ICE presence in areas experiencing recent demographic transition. Field agents will conduct residential contact operations in designated high-transition zones. Contact language will be standardized to maintain consistency. Agents will request identification, verify residency, and document encounters via stop-log protocol only. No arrests are anticipated. Authorization status. Pending regional approval. Pending. Not approved. Pending. Dominique looks at the date again. March 14th. She cross-references it against the stop-log data. The first documented stop matching this profile was logged March 22nd, 8 days after the memo was circulated. 8 days after it was sent to field supervisors with a status that read, pending approval. Someone started the program before it was authorized. She scrolls to the bottom of the memo. The sender field reads, Deputy Director Alston Briggs, Southwest Regional Operations. Dominique saves the document. She saves it 3 times in 3 different folders. She sends it to an encrypted cloud server. She prints it. She holds the printed page in both hands and stares at the words demographic transition for 10 full seconds. Then she calls Zendaya. The memo exists, she says. What does it say? Zendaya asks. Dominique reads her the key phrases. High transition zones, residential contact operations, no arrests anticipated, pending approval. The line goes quiet. It was never approved, Zendaya says. Correct? They were doing it anyway. Correct. For 11 months. Dominique does not answer right away. She is looking at the recipient list on the memo. 3 field supervisors. Coulter's name is not on it, but his supervisor's name is a man named Deputy Supervisor Kendrick Vaughn. There's more, Dominique says. I pulled Vaughn's internal communications for the same time period. 2 days after this memo went out, he sent an email to Coulter and 2 other agents. The subject line was blank. Yet the body of the email was 1 sentence. She reads it exactly as written. Good to proceed on residential engagement. Keep documentation minimal. Zendaya is silent for 4 seconds. Keep documentation minimal, she repeats. That's what it says. That's an instruction to avoid creating records. That's exactly what it is. Zendaya stands up from her desk. She walks to the window of her chambers. Outside, the Austin skyline is gold in the late afternoon. The traffic below moves in slow lines. Everything looks normal, ordinary, like nothing is happening. But inside the federal building across the city, something is happening. A document that was never supposed to leave internal channels is now sitting in a civil rights attorney's case file. An email that was supposed to stay buried in a supervisor's outbox is now flagged as evidence. A program that ran for 11 months without official approval is now exposed in black ink on white paper. And the people who authorized it, the people who knew it was unauthorized and ran it anyway, are about to learn that a federal appellate court judge makes a very inconvenient plaintiff. File the complaint, Zendaya says. We're ready, Dominique says. I've drafted the full pattern documentation. 15 corroborating witnesses, 111 stops. The memo, the email, Coulter's complaint history, Vaughn's approval to proceed, Briggs's authorship of an unauthorized program. We have every layer. Zendaya closes her eyes for a moment. She breathes in through her nose, out through her mouth. When she opens her eyes again, yet her voice is steady. Then file it. Dominique files the complaint the next morning at 9:02 a.m. in the Western District of Texas. The case caption reads, Zendaya Okafor Price versus United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Agent Marcus Coulter, Deputy Supervisor Kendrick Vaughn, Deputy Director Alston Briggs, et al. The claims are 43 pages long. By 10:30 a.m., a paralegal in the ICE Regional Counsel's office has forwarded the filing to 3 different people. By 11:15 a.m., Briggs is sitting in a conference room with 2 attorneys from the Department of Homeland Security Office of General Counsel. By noon, Coulter knows. He reads the complaint on his phone in the parking lot of the field office. He scrolls through page after page of stop log entries, demographic data, the memo he never saw but was operating under, the email his supervisor sent him that he deleted but someone else saved. He gets to page 37. That is where his complaint history is laid out. 14 prior complaints, 11 years, 8 accusations of racial profiling, every single one reviewed and dismissed by Internal Affairs. He stops reading. His hands are shaking. He sits in his truck for 20 minutes without moving. Then he drives home. He does not go back inside the office that day. He does not go back the next day either. 3 days after the complaint is filed, Coulter receives a letter via certified mail. It is from the Office of Professional Responsibility. He is placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of a formal investigation. The letter does not say investigation into what. It does not need to. Inside the field office, the mood has gone from normal to locked down in 72 hours. Agents who were in the same unit as Coulter stopped talking about the case in the hallways. Supervisors who were copied on the March 14th memo start checking their own email archives to see what they said, what they did not say, what they can claim they did not know. Vaughn retains private counsel on day 5. Briggs retains private counsel on day 6. And in a quiet office in Dallas, Dominique Renard Ellis is preparing for the next phase. Discovery. The deposition takes place in a conference room in downtown Austin on a Thursday morning in late September. The room is cold. The air conditioning hums through a ceiling vent that no one can reach to adjust. There are 6 people at the table. Kendrick Vaughn. His attorney, a man in his 60s with wire-rim glasses and a leather briefcase that looks like it has been through 3 decades of depositions just like this one. Dominique Renard Ellis, a court reporter, a videographer, and a junior attorney from Dominique's firm whose job is to take notes and stay quiet. Vaughn is 49 years old. He has been with ICE for 18 years. He has a military background, 8 years in the Army before he transitioned to federal law enforcement. He has the posture of someone who spent a long time being told to sit up straight, and he has the eyes of someone who knows exactly how much trouble he is in. Dominique opens with the standard preliminary questions. Name, employment history, current position. She lets Vaughn settle into the rhythm. His answers are clipped, professional. See, he does not volunteer anything. Then she shifts. Mr. Vaughn, she says, are you familiar with a memorandum dated March 14th of last year with the subject line Residential Engagement Pilot Program? Vaughn looks at his attorney. His attorney nods once. Yes, Vaughn says. Did you receive that memo? Yes. Who sent it to you? Deputy Director Briggs. And what did you understand the purpose of that memo to be? Vaughn pauses. He shifts in his chair. It outlined a proposed program for increased community engagement in certain areas. Community engagement, Dominique repeats. She does not say it like a question. She says it like she is holding the words up to the light. Can you describe what that engagement looked like in practice? Agents would make contact with residents, verify residency, document the interaction. Why? Vaughn hesitates. To establish ICE presence in high-transition neighborhoods. High transition, Dominique says. What does that mean? Another pause, longer this time. Areas where the demographic composition was changing. Changing how? Vaughn's attorney leans forward. Counsel, I'm not sure this line of questioning is... Changing how, Mr. Vaughn? Dominique asks again. Vaughn looks at the table. Increased minority homeownership? The room goes quiet. The court reporter's fingers keep moving. The videographer's red light stays on, but the air in the room changes. It gets heavier, colder. Dominique does not react. She just moves to the next question. When you received that memo on March 14th, what was the authorization status listed at the bottom? Pending approval. Pending approval from whom? Regional oversight. Did you wait for that approval before implementing the program? Vaughn's jaw tightens. I authorized my agents to begin preliminary engagement. How many days after receiving the memo did you authorize that? 2 days. So you authorized a program that was listed as pending approval before it was approved. Silence. Mr. Vaughn, I need you to answer the question. Yes, he says. Dominique pulls a document from the folder in front of her. She slides it across the table. It is the email, the one-line email. Good to proceed on residential engagement. Keep documentation minimal. Is this your email? She asks. Vaughn looks at it. His face does not change, but his breathing does. And it gets shallower, faster. Yes. Can you explain what you meant by keep documentation minimal? His attorney speaks up. My client is not going to speculate on... It's not speculation, Dominique says. It's his email. He wrote it. I'm asking him what he meant. She waits. Vaughn looks at his attorney. His attorney nods reluctantly. I meant, Vaughn says slowly, that agents should focus on stop logs rather than full incident reports. Why? To streamline the process. Streamline, Dominique says. She lets the words sit. Or to avoid creating a paper trail that could be reviewed later. Vaughn does not answer. Mr. Vaughn, did you know that Agent Coulter had 8 prior complaints alleging racial profiling? I was aware of complaints. Yes. Were you aware of the specific nature of those complaints? I was generally aware. Were you aware that all 8 complaints involved interactions with Black or Hispanic residents? Vaughn shifts again. I did not review each complaint in detail. Did anyone in your chain of command review them in detail? Internal Affairs reviewed them. And what did Internal Affairs find? They found no sustained violations. No sustained violations, Dominique repeats, despite 8 separate complaints over 9 years, all involving people of color. Internal Affairs found nothing wrong. She pulls another document. This one is Coulter's full IA review file. She has read every page. She knows what is in it. She knows what is not in it. Mr. Vaughn, in your 18 years with ICE, have you ever seen an agent with 8 complaints in the same category cleared every single time? Vaughn does not answer right away. Mr. Vaughn, it's not uncommon, he says. It's not uncommon for an agent to have 8 racial profiling complaints and still be in the field conducting residential stops in minority neighborhoods? His attorney interrupts. Objection. Argumentative. Dominique does not look at the attorney. She keeps her eyes on Vaughn. Did you ever recommend additional training for Agent Coulter? She asks. No. Did you ever recommend reassignment? No. Did you ever recommend any corrective action? No. Why not? Vaughn looks at her for the first time in 5 minutes. His voice, when it comes, is tight, defensive. Here because Internal Affairs had cleared him. Even though you knew he was conducting stops in neighborhoods where the majority of residents were people of color, even though you knew those stops resulted in 0 arrests, even though you authorized him to proceed with a program that was never officially approved, you saw nothing wrong. She does not wait for him to answer. She moves to the next section of questions. She asks about the body cam footage. She asks why 74 out of 111 stops have no video record. She asks whether Vaughn instructed agents to turn off their cameras. She asks whether the phrase, keep documentation minimal, extended to video. Vaughn's answers get shorter, tighter, more rehearsed. By the time the deposition ends at 4:47 p.m., Dominique has 11 pages of admissions. She has Vaughn on record saying he authorized an unapproved program. She has him admitting he knew about Coulter's complaints. She has him unable to explain why an agent with 8 racial profiling complaints was assigned to conduct residential stops in minority neighborhoods. She packs her files. She nods to Vaughn's attorney. She walks out of the conference room and into the elevator. When the doors close, she exhales for the first time in 6 hours. Her phone buzzes. It is a message from Zendaya. How did it go? Dominique types back 3 words. He's done. The settlement offer comes 6 weeks later. It arrives via email at 3:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sender is Senior Counsel for the Department of Homeland Security Office of General Counsel. The subject line reads, Settlement Discussion, Okafor Price versus ICE et al. Dominique opens it in her office with Zendaya on a video call. The email is professional, courteous. It acknowledges that the matter has generated significant documentation and that all parties may benefit from exploring resolution outside of extended litigation. Then it gets to the number, $425,000. Dominique reads it out loud. Zendaya, on the other end of the screen, goes very still. $425,000, she says. Correct. For 11 months of unauthorized stops, for 111 families, for a federal program that targeted people based on where they lived and what they looked like. That's the opening offer, Dominique says. Zendaya does not blink. Reject it. I will. But I want to make sure you understand what rejection means. It means we go to trial. It means months of depositions, public testimony, media coverage. It means your name is attached to this case in every search result for the next decade. I know what it means, Zendaya says. Dominique watches her through the screen. She has worked with a lot of plaintiffs over the years. Some want money. Some want vindication. Some just want the ordeal to be over. Zendaya wants something else. She wants the system to admit what it did. Reject the offer, Zendaya says again. And in your response, tell them we are not negotiating a settlement without a formal institutional acknowledgement that a racially discriminatory enforcement program was deployed without authorization. In writing. On the record. Non-negotiable. Dominique types the response that afternoon. She sends it at 5:18 p.m. 3 days later, the government attorneys request a phone conference. The call happens on a Friday morning. There are 4 attorneys on the line from the government side. Dominique is alone in her office. She puts them on speaker and takes notes. The lead counsel, a woman named Margaret Devereaux, who has been handling federal civil rights cases for 15 years, opens with a revised offer. $1.2 million. Dominique writes it down. She does not react. "And the acknowledgement?" she asks. There is a pause on the line. "We can include a statement," Devereaux says carefully, "that acknowledges certain procedural irregularities in the implementation of the residential engagement program." Procedural irregularities, Dominique repeats. Seems yes. That's not an acknowledgement of racial discrimination. "We are not prepared to make that characterization," Devereaux says. "Then we're not prepared to settle," Dominique says. She ends the call. 2 weeks later, the government files a motion to compel arbitration. Dominique opposes it. The judge denies the motion in a 4-page order that includes the sentence, "The factual record presented by plaintiff suggests a pattern of enforcement that warrants full judicial review." The government appeals. The appellate panel upholds the denial. They are going to trial. Discovery intensifies. Dominique deposes Briggs. She deposes Coulter. She deposes 2 other agents who participated in the residential stops. She deposes the internal affairs officer who reviewed and dismissed all 8 of Coulter's prior complaints. Though every deposition builds the same picture. A program designed to remind people of color that they were being watched. A program authorized by mid-level supervisors who never got formal approval. A program that ran for 11 months because no one at the top wanted to know it was happening. By the time the trial date is set, 14 months after the morning Coulter blocked Zendaya's driveway, the case file is 963 pages long. The trial is scheduled for 12 days. It will not take that long. On day 3, the government requests an emergency conference with the judge. The conference happens in chambers, off the record. Dominique and Zendaya are not present, but they receive a call from the judge's clerk at 4:52 p.m. that same day. The government has indicated they wish to discuss settlement, the clerk says. The judge is requesting both parties return tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for a mediation session. Dominique and Zendaya sit in the courthouse hallway the next morning at 8:47 a.m. They do not talk. They do not need to. They both know what is about to happen. The government has seen the jury. They have seen the way the jury looked at the body cam footage. They have seen the way the jury reacted when Briggs admitted under oath that he authored a memo for a program that was never formally approved. They have seen 15 residents testify that they were stopped in their own neighborhoods, asked to prove they belonged, and then released without explanation. The jury is not on the government's side. At 9:03 a.m., they are called into the judge's chambers. The government's offer is waiting on the table, $7.1 million. A formal acknowledgement that the residential engagement program constituted a pattern of racially discriminatory enforcement activity conducted without proper authorization. Mandatory independent oversight of all Southwest Region field operations for 5 years. Creation of a civilian complaint review board with subpoena authority. Immediate termination of the residential engagement program and destruction of all related lists and targeting materials. Mandatory quarterly demographic audits of all field stops with public reporting. Dominique looks at Zendaya. Zendaya reads through the terms twice. Then she looks at the judge. "I want one more thing," she says. The room goes quiet. "I want Agent Coulter decertified. He entered into the National Decertification Index. He will never carry a federal badge again. That's the deal." The government attorneys look at each other. Devereaux speaks carefully. "We cannot make employment decisions as part of a settlement." "Then we go back to trial," Zendaya says. The room is silent for 8 seconds. Finally, Devereaux nods. "We will recommend termination and decertification to the Office of Professional Responsibility." "That's not good enough," Zendaya says. "It's the most we can do within our authority." Dominique leans forward. "Then make it a condition of the settlement that if OPR does not decertify him within 60 days, the oversight period extends to 7 years instead of 5. The attorneys confer in whispers. Devereaux looks up. "Agreed." Zendaya stands. She looks at Dominique. "I'll sign it." The settlement is executed at 2:14 p.m. that same day. The terms are filed under seal, but the dollar amount becomes public within hours. By 6 p.m., the story is on every local news station. Federal judge wins $7.1 million in racial profiling case against ICE. Zendaya does not watch the news that night. She goes home. She makes dinner. She sits in her study and looks out the window at Briarwood Court, where the streetlights are coming on one by one in the October dusk. Her phone rings 47 times before she turns it off. She does not want interviews. She does not want congratulations. She does not want to be the face of anything. She just wanted them to stop. And now they have. 3 months after the settlement is signed, Zendaya receives a letter. It comes in a plain white envelope with no return address. She opens it at her kitchen table on a Saturday morning. Inside is a single sheet of paper, handwritten in blue ink. Judge Okafor Price, my name is Annika Westbrook. I live at 4203 Briarwood Court, 2 houses down from you. I was one of the people stopped last year. I never said anything. I didn't know who to tell. I thought maybe I did something wrong. Maybe my car looked suspicious. Maybe I was parked the wrong way. I kept thinking of reasons why it happened. Then I saw the news. I saw your case. I saw the number. 111 stops. I realized I wasn't the only one. I realized I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I needed to write it anyway. Thank you for not staying quiet. Zendaya reads the letter 3 times. Then she folds it carefully and puts it back in the envelope. She sets it on the kitchen counter and stares at it for a long time. She did not do this for recognition. She did not do it for money. She did it because someone had to count the stops. Someone had to turn the numbers into names, and the names into a pattern that could no longer be ignored. But this letter from a neighbor she has never met, someone who thought she was alone until she saw the case go public. This is the part she did not expect. She thinks about calling Dominique. She thinks about framing the letter. She thinks about writing back. Instead, she gets dressed. She walks 2 houses down Briarwood Court and knocks on the door of 4203. A woman in her early 30s opens it. She has a toddler on her hip and the kind of tired eyes that come from working 2 jobs and still making rent every month. Annika? Zendaya says. The woman's face changes. Recognition, surprise, something close to relief. Judge Okafor Price, she says. Zendaya, she corrects. Can I come in? They sit in Annika's living room for an hour. Annika describes the morning the agents came, how she was loading her daughter into the car seat, how they asked whose house it was, how they made her wait in the driveway while they ran her name, how they asked if anyone else lived there, how they left without explaining anything. I was so scared, Annika says. I kept thinking they were going to come back. I kept thinking I did something. You didn't, Zendaya says. I know that now, Annika says. But I didn't know it then. Zendaya leaves an hour later. She walks back down Briarwood Court in the cool March air, past the houses where other families live, families who were also stopped, families who also thought they were alone, families who now know they were not. The settlement money comes through in April, $7.1 million, minus legal fees and administrative costs. The final amount deposited into Zendaya's account is $5.8 million. She sits with that number for 3 days. Then she makes a decision. She calls Dominique. I want to create a fund, she says. What kind of fund? Dominique asks. Legal defense, for people who can't afford to fight cases like this, for people who get stopped and don't know their rights, for people who think they're alone. Dominique is quiet for a moment. So, how much do you want to put in? $2 million, Zendaya says. $2 million, Dominique repeats. Yes. That's a third of your settlement. I know, Zendaya says, but it's enough to start something that doesn't end when the news stops covering it. The fund is established in June. It is called the Briarwood Accountability Initiative. The mission statement is 1 sentence long: to provide free legal representation to individuals subjected to unlawful enforcement actions in their own communities. The fund takes its first case in August. A man in Houston who was stopped in his driveway by ICE agents and detained for 6 hours, despite having valid identification and no criminal record. The agents claimed they were conducting a fugitive sweep. They had no warrant, no probable cause. No explanation beyond "we're allowed to be here." The fund assigns him an attorney. The case settles in 4 months. The man receives $340,000. The agency issues a formal apology. The agents involved are placed on administrative review. It is not the last case. By the end of the first year, the Briarwood Accountability Initiative has taken on 11 cases. 9 have settled. One is in trial. One was dismissed on procedural grounds but is being appealed. The fund is not famous. It does not make headlines. It is not the kind of story that goes viral or gets turned into a documentary. It is just a quiet, steady mechanism for making sure that the next person who gets stopped in their own driveway has someone to call who will believe them and will fight for them. Zendaya does not run the fund herself. She appoints a board. It's not as she hires an executive director. She stays on as an advisor. But she does not make it about herself. She does not give interviews. She does not write a memoir. She does not go on speaking tours. She goes back to work. She rules on cases. She writes opinions. She sits on the bench and listens to arguments about the law. And she applies the law the way she has always applied it. Carefully, precisely, without favor or fear. And on a Tuesday morning in November, almost 2 years after the morning Coulter pulled into her driveway, Zendaya receives a notification from the Office of Professional Responsibility. Agent Marcus Coulter has been decertified. He will never hold a federal badge again. She reads the notification twice. Then she closes the email. She does not celebrate. She does not call anyone. She just sits in her chambers and looks out the window at the city below, where the traffic moves in slow lines and the world looks ordinary. And she thinks about the 111 families who were stopped, and the 15 who testified, and the one neighbor who wrote her a letter and said, "Thank you for not staying quiet." She thinks about how justice is not loud, how it does not arrive with fanfare or headlines, how it is built in spreadsheets and depositions, and carefully worded settlement terms that no one will ever read, but that will protect the next person, and the person after that, and the person after that. She picks up her pen. She has a ruling to write. Do you think $7.1 million was enough for what she went through? What would real accountability look like in your community? Drop your thoughts in the comments. In 2 years and 4 months after the settlement, Zendaya is invited to speak at the National Civil Liberties Law Conference in Washington, D.C. She declines. A month later, she is asked to testify before a congressional subcommittee reviewing federal enforcement practices in residential areas. She agrees. She flies to D.C. on a Tuesday. She sits at a long table in a hearing room with too many lights and too many cameras and reads a prepared statement into a microphone. The statement is 3 minutes long. She does not describe the morning in her driveway. She does not talk about the fear or the humiliation or the 9 minutes she spent answering questions after her identity had already cleared. She talks about the numbers: 111 stops, 0 arrests, a program that ran for 11 months without authorization, a pattern that was documented, ignored, and allowed to continue until someone with resources and legal training forced it into the light. She talks about the families who were stopped and never knew they could fight back, the ones who thought it was their fault, the ones who stayed quiet because they did not know the system was required to justify itself. She talks about oversight, about body cam review protocols, about independent civilian complaint boards with real authority, about the difference between policy and practice, and how the gap between the two is where abuse lives. The subcommittee thanks her for her testimony. A senator from California asks her one question. Judge Okafor Price, in your view, what would prevent this from happening again? Zendaya looks at him. She thinks about the answer for 3 seconds. Then she speaks. Transparency, she says. Real transparency. Not policy documents that say the right things. Not training seminars that check a box. Actual, public, quarterly reporting of every stop made by every agent in every zip code, broken down by demographics, outcomes, and duration. Make the data public. Make it searchable. Let people see the pattern before it reaches 111 stops. The senator nods. He writes something down. He thanks her again. Zendaya flies back to Austin that evening. She does not know if the subcommittee will act on anything she said. She does not know if the testimony will lead to new policy or new oversight, or anything beyond a transcript that gets filed in a congressional archive and forgotten, but she knows she said it, on the record. And in a room full of people whose job is to write laws, that is enough. 3 weeks later, the Department of Homeland Security announces new guidelines for residential enforcement operations. The guidelines require documented, reasonable suspicion before any non-warrant-based residential contact. They require body cam activation for all field interactions. They require quarterly demographic audits of all stops with public reporting. They establish independent review panels in all regional field offices. The guidelines are not perfect. They have loopholes. They will be challenged. They will be tested. but they exist. And they exist because someone counted the stops and turned the numbers into a case and forced the system to answer. The Briarwood Accountability Initiative continues its work. By the end of year 3, the fund has supported 29 cases. 23 have settled. 4 are in active litigation. 2 were dismissed but are being appealed. The fund has distributed over $4.7 million in settlements to individuals who were subjected to unlawful enforcement actions. Annika Westbrook, the woman from 4203 Briarwood Court, becomes a volunteer coordinator for the fund. She helps identify new cases. She reaches out to families who were stopped and did not know they had legal options. She tells them what happened to her. She tells them about Zendaya. She tells them they are not alone. Zendaya does not run the fund day to day, but she stays connected. She reviews case summaries. She advises on legal strategy. She writes a check every year to keep the fund operational. And on a morning in late spring, on almost 3 years after the settlement, she is sitting in her chambers when her clerk brings her a message. Someone is here to see her. No appointment. They said it's personal. Zendaya looks up. Who? He said his name is Darius Coulter. The room goes very still. Zendaya does not move. She does not speak. She stares at the message slip in her clerk's hand for 5 full seconds. Tell him I'm not available, she says. The clerk nods and leaves. But an hour later, Zendaya walks out of the courthouse and sees a man standing by the curb. Late 40s, gray at the temples. Shoulders that used to carry authority but now just look tired. He sees her. He does not approach. He just stands there, hands in his pockets, like he has been waiting, and is not sure if he should keep waiting or leave. Zendaya stops. She looks at him. See, she does not walk over. She does not say anything. Coulter takes 1 step forward. Just 1. Judge Okafor Price, he says. His voice is rough, uncertain. I know I have no right to be here. I know you don't owe me anything. I needed to say, I'm sorry. Zendaya does not respond. I didn't think about what I was doing, he continues. I didn't think about how it felt. I was following orders. I was doing what I was told. And that's not an excuse. I know it's not. I needed you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. The street is quiet. A car passes. The wind moves through the trees lining the courthouse steps. Zendaya stands there, briefcase in one hand, looking at the man who stood in her driveway 3 years ago and asked her whose property she was standing on. She thinks about saying something. And she thinks about telling him that sorry is not enough. She thinks about telling him that 111 families deserve apologies, not just her. She thinks about telling him that decertification is not punishment. It is consequence, and consequence is what happens when people in power stop being accountable. But she does not say any of those things. She just looks at him for 3 more seconds. Then she turns and walks to her car. She gets in. She drives home. Coulter stays on the curb for another minute. Then he leaves. Zendaya does not think about him again that day. She goes home. She makes dinner. She sits in her study and looks out at Briarwood Court, where the lights are coming on in the spring dusk, one house at a time, in a slow chain down the block. Her phone buzzes. It is a message from Dominique. A new case just came in. Houston. Same profile. Same language. Different agents. Want to take it? Zendaya reads the message. She sets the phone down. She thinks about the letter from Annika Westbrook. She thinks about the 15 families who testified. She thinks about the ones who stayed quiet because they thought they were alone. She picks up the phone. She types 1 word. Yes. Because this is the work. This is what accountability looks like. Not one case. Not one settlement. Not one viral story that disappears when the next news cycle starts. It is the quiet, steady effort of making sure that every single time someone in power forgets that they are required to justify themselves, there is someone ready to remind them. And if that someone has to be her, again and again and again, then that is what she will do. She closes her laptop. She turns off the desk lamp. She walks out of the study and into the rest of her home, where the ordinary rhythms of life continue. Dinner, dishes, sleep, morning, as if nothing happened, as if the world is not different now, as if one person deciding not to stay quiet did not shift the ground under an entire system. But the ground did shift, and it will keep shifting, Because the work does not end with the settlement. It does not end with the news story. It does not end when the cameras leave. It ends when people stop being stopped in their own driveways for no reason other than someone in power thought they could. And until that day, the work continues. If you believe that real accountability requires more than apologies, that it requires transparency, oversight, and people willing to fight when the system fails, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and turn on notifications. Because we bring you stories that matter. Stories that don't end when the headlines stop. Stories that show you what justice actually looks like when it's built one case at a time. Drop a comment below and tell us, what does accountability mean in your community? Your voice matters. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're not alone. We're in this together.